And then Spider, Spider was he was probably, I think he was the first one. He was before everybody. Spider was on the radio on WRBD, and he used to do mixes. He used to do really good mixes. They were pre-recorded. We found out later they were pre-recorded, but he used to edit. That was the first time I ever heard somebody use, editing in that way. And I was like, wow. I was like, what is he doing? Sounds like he's on 10 turntables. I just thought it was a guy that had like multiple turntables, and so it just took on this. It had this mystique behind it because I didn't know how it was done. I don't think I even had turntables at that time when I heard Spider. I hadn't knew nothing about it. It was just like sounding like somebody just had like lots of turntables, man. I was like, wow, this is crazy. But later on when I found out, what it was, like the first time I seen it was fast forward was Phil Jones. I think it was like 1984. I used to go to Hot 105 with Phil Jones.
Sorry, I can't help but laugh at that. Sorry.
I constantly get that Power 105 and Power 96 is just Phil Jones, he was Tanner had brought him in to do Hot 105, and he used to do, him and Bob Rosenberg used to do the mix show. I think Phil brought Bob in, and Bob kind of ended up doing Bob ended up taking Friday, and Phil ended up taking Saturday. And Bob, so the first time I seen somebody do it was Phil Jones. And once I seen it, I was like, I knew I was going to be doing that. I knew that's something I was going to be getting into. I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to be getting into it. And actually, Phil Jones used to work at the Panther before I did, so that's how we really became like good friends.
No, let me pause you there, because we're jumping from
park
DJs to radio and editing.
Okay.
But I never understood this. I know that you have your roots in both. How did you go from one to the other and back and forth?
Well, by the time I started getting into the studio part of it, I had kind of left the mobile DJ aspect of it.
So
I mean, like
let's
CS.
talk about that. How did CS come about?
Well, CS came about was it was just it was like we was all living in the same complex as Irving.
German.
Yeah, Irving German MC Chief. He used to live over there, and he had his DJ equipment, and he was good too. He was really good at the time, and it kind of like inspired us to get our own equipment. Me and this four of us. It's me, this cat named Robert Earl, and Graham, and this cat Richie Lau, God rest peace, and this girl. It was a bunch of that was the main four was me, Robert Earl, Graham, and Richie Lau, which everybody knows him as Knock Knock, and he was I guess he was like the first influence. Yo, can we close the door? Cause that's kind of like it's distracting me.
I guess distracted.
Yeah.
Would you say?
So sorry.
It's all right. That's all right. It's not your fault. It's all right. You could just close the door so we
You
can.
want the door closed?
Can I?
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then like whenever.
Yeah. Thanks, man. So.
I'm itching to ask about Mr. Hanks. Whenever you want to throw that.
Mr. Hanks. Mr. Hanks. Who's Mr. Hanks?
This is the way I understand the story, and,
Yeah.
and I think you're the expert who could correct me,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to piece it together. The way I understand it was through some supplemental funds, let's say. Some of the earliest DJs were getting professional gear, and you are specifically the person I'd like to bounce this off of, because in New York it's about Richard Long. We know that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, you talking about Mr.
Florida,
Hanks? That used to, yeah.
the Southern
Oh man,
Cowboys.
I forgot
And
about.
the way I'm
Damn.
understanding the difference between, let's say, the pedigree of New York hip hop is it was more about the records. You could go to Downstairs Records.
Right.
You can
It
go to
wasn't
Stanley
about the sound
Platzer,
system.
But down there, I mean, they had them. They had the
Yeah.
Sasquatch. They had the
Right.
Herculoids, all that.
Right.
But down there,
It was
Mr.
purely
Hanks,
about the sounds.
Yeah, and Mr. Hank was our Richard Long.
Yeah.
And there was more supplemental funds.
Well, Richard Long did Nepentha too.
I did not know.
Yeah. Something he has something to do with it. Either a protege, somebody that was under him, or him directly. That's why it was so. That's why it had such a reputation.
Okay. Like
So Mr. Hanks was kind of like a little bit out of our league, man. It was like we thought about it. We definitely wanted. We was aiming it, but it was like, yo, like them cabinets was way too much for us, man. Like one cabinet was like it took 5 of us to work a year, you know what I mean, just to get one of those cabinets. It was like, but they were well made, you know. But we got into you know, it's like, you know, you do carpentry work and stuff like that. People, you kind of familiar with acoustics and how you know, you start to get into that. And Graham was really like key to that process, that part of it, man. He just had the hands and the natural knowledge. He actually became an electrical engineer later, which was like, that's crazy, because when we were young, he was like 4 years younger than me, but his hands, he just can get it. He had these hands where he could just take apart things and get into it, and so he played a big part in that. You know, we bought the speakers. We went to get the wood from like Lindsley Lumber. You know, before Home Depot came around was Lindsley Lumber, and the first few ones we made, they were like shit. You know what I mean? They weren't. And then we figured out how to get the scoops and everything. We put the wood in the water and so it could bend, and that was crazy, man. Like coming up with that, and then we came up with sub cabinets. We figured out how to do that. It just was like, man, like, you know, it definitely was it was definitely a learning experience, man. I took that with me to go. I learned that when I went from there. By the time I got to like, you know, engineering, I didn't even go to school for engineering. It was just fucking around with all that equipment so much, and just, you know, just being engulfed in it. That was my life. You get books, and then you start to, you know, you go around people, and you go around other like DJs, and some guys as engineers, and, you know, like later on I went around this guy. I ran into another guy. Then when I started, one thing was like seeing was one thing. That was one kind of thing. But when I got around like some of the Jamaicans down that was in the South, like oh man, what was their name? It was a bunch of groups, man. Like Waggy T was in the group. Waggy T was a big DJ down there. He was like a reggae DJ, and I forgot the name of his crew. But when I started getting around them, yo, their speakers was fucking crazy. Like, you know, the Jamaicans. So you know what I mean? Like this shit was like they just took our shit out. By the time I got around them, it was like